Starting your own vegetable seeds is a great way to save a little money on your garden, as well as to ensure that you are growing the exact plants that you want. Before you start any seeds indoors, the very first thing that you want to do is to sanitize your containers for growing. Lots of containers can be great for being repurposed into seed starting containers. Milk jugs and other clear plastic containers can be wonderful things, but before we add any soil, the first thing we are going to do is sanitize them. I like to mix my sanitizer into 1-gallon containers because I can make a lot of volume, which I can use to clean out this one container that I will eventually plant in, as well as sanitize others. So if you are using a 1-gallon container, you want to start by measuring 13 ounces of a chlorine bleach solution and adding that to your milk jug. A liquid measuring cup will give us the exact amount of ounces on the side. And then we can add that into our milk jug or 1-gallon container. And then we will fill the rest of this container with water, put the cap on, and shake. From here we will have a solution that is ready to go to sanitize a wide variety of containers for seed starting. Alright, I have added water to my 1-gallon container. I am shaking it up to make sure that the bleach water is ready to go, and then I'm actually going to pour this mixture into the other containers that I plan on using. If you're using seed trays or other items, you could also pour this solution into a bucket or container that would allow you to sanitize larger groups of things at once. This is a reusable seed starting tray. So this has got some styrofoam in there that I will be using from last year again to this year. And particularly if you are reusing things that have soil in it, we really want to take the time to sanitize these and let them air dry, so that any bacteria that might have lingered on the soil from last year or collected while this was sitting in my garage over the winter is gone. So I'm going to pour my sanitizer solution onto this as well. And I'm going to let it soak for a few minutes while I sanitize my other 1-gallon container. Other great containers that can be used for seed starting that also do need to be sterilized are any kinds of plastic cups. If you're using recycled seed trays from last year, those also need to be sanitized. Any kind of aluminum baking dish as well also needs to be cleaned. So once all of these are cleaned, I'm going to pour my solution. I'm going to dispose of it down the drain, and then I'm going to let all of my containers air dry. And while they are air drying, I'm going to mix up my soil. When starting seeds indoors, you really want to focus on the soil. If you are purchasing a soil, you really want to grab a seed starting mix. That'll be indicated on the label. Soil that is made intentionally for seed starting tends to have really fine particles and a higher nutrient value for our baby plants. So once you've got your soil in there, like this one, which was purchased, you'll notice that many of our purchased soils are sterile, but they are also very dry. With baby plants and with all plants, keeping that soil moisture level consistent is key to success in growing. So before I put fill any of my containers with soil, I'm actually going to start by pre-moistening my soil to the correct level. I like to use a tub or a bucket to do this so that I have space to mix and make sure that the water moves evenly throughout my soil. This is also a great activity to do outdoors for a little bit less mess. So I've got my soil. It's very dry and crumbly, which you can see. It's not sticking together at all in my hands. So I'm going to start adding some water to mix it up. Mixes like this that are dry take a really surprising amount of water to add even moisture. So this may take a few minutes, and I'm just going to add water, use my hands to stir. Periodically I'm going to check. So if I squeeze the soil, I want it to be able to clump but fall apart easily in my hands. Right now it's not really staying together, so I know I'm going to need some more water. So just adding a little bit at a time and continuing to mix and mix is what I'm going to do. This is starting to feel better, so I'm going to do another check. I can kind of see my soil clumping a little bit as I'm going, so I can now hold it up. I can feel a little water trickling out of my fingers as I squeeze, and you'll notice that the soil has now got a solid mass in my hand, and it is crumbling into larger chunks. So that means that my soil is ready. So once the soil is ready, I'll check on my sterilized containers to see how they're doing, and when my sterile containers are dry, I'm going to fill them with my moist soil before I do any planting. Once the seed starting containers are dry and the soil is moist, it's time to start filling containers with soil. If you are repurposing containers like a clear plastic bottle, you probably want to go ahead and cut the top off. If you are doing these kinds of containers are great if you're not planning on potting up larger plants like broccoli or tomatoes. And depending on your goals and how many of them you're doing, you may want to poke some holes in the bottom for a little water drainage, or you can leave them filled up. So either way, I've cut the top off this container, and now I'm going to fill it all the way to the very top with soil. It is so tempting when we are filling containers with soil to pack the soil in. However, we're putting baby plants in here, and they like a nice fluffy bed. So you can kind of shake your soil to make sure it goes all the way to the bottom, because this container's got some kind of funky shapes on the side that the soil's not going all the way down. But I don't want to pack it in. I want to make sure that the soil, there's plenty of air in the soil right now so that the roots of the plant can go down easily. Over time, as we're watering, the soil is going to compact a little bit naturally, and that's okay. So the same if you are utilizing something like a 1 gallon jug. Cutting it, I've made a cut here around the side just below the handle. So I've got plenty of soil depth for my seed starting, and I'm going to fill that again all the way to the top with soil. Finally, I'm going to fill my tray here too. So this has got lots of little plugs in it, which you can see, and I'm going to fill this by pouring the soil over the top and kind of shaking it down into each little plug. So this tray, there we go, is now filled, and because my soil is pre-moistened, when I flip it over, the soil is sticking together. I have good aggregate connection, and then I'm ready to go. From here, it is time to select the seeds. If you are following along with ID 128, we have a great seed starting list, recommendations for plants to start indoors. Some common ones here in Kentucky that folks like to start are tomatoes, peppers, broccoli, cabbage, cauliflower. All of those things tend to have a longer growing season and would really benefit by being started indoors as a seedling 6 to 8 weeks before the recommended outdoor planting date. There are many other seeds that you can start indoors, or depending on the time of year, you can also just direct sow. With all of these, why we're starting plants indoors right now is because the soil outdoors is very, very cold. So we're creating an environment, and I'm going to take these things into my house so that I have a warm indoor place where I can have some warm soil for my plants to grow. And additionally, many of those plants also just take a long time to grow. So it's time to giving them kind of a head jump on that warm soil season by growing them indoors. So no matter what your reason is, if you are planning to grow some of those specialty crops or looking for a good hobby in this chilly but slightly warmer weather and you're feeling antsy to garden, it's time to think about starting some seeds indoors. Once your seed trays are full and set, it's time to start planting. Different seeds need different associations with light and soil contact. If you're planting something like a tomato or a pepper indoors, you actually want to lay the seed on the soil surface because the light triggers germination faster than if you were to plant it down in the soil. Today I'm going to be starting some artichoke seeds, some collard green seeds, and some chive and Swiss chard seeds. In order to kind of keep them all straight, because I'm using one tray for several things, I'm going to use some plant tags to kind of mark along the way what I've got going on. So specifically I'm going to start with our collard greens. So these seeds can go down in the soil, so I'm just going to very gently use the tip of my finger and just lightly depress. It says 1/4 inch total underground. So I'm just going to do a little light indentation here, and then I will eventually come back and cover this whole tray with more soil. So for now, I am just doing a little indent. I'm going to do my very best with these tiny seeds to just drop 2 seeds in each hole. And if I end up with more, I'm going to come back and have to thin them out later. But my very best intention with these small seeds is to just get a few, 2 ideally, into each hole. We've got 2 rows of collards, and so I don't forget what's going on, I'm going to go ahead and make my label. If you are really into what you're growing, putting the name of the plant, the specific variety, and then the date that you have sown them on here is really important. The date in particular, that way you will know if it has germinated or not. So I have got my collards here, and I'm going to put a little arrow to remind myself that those 2 rows are collards. And I'm going to come back through with some artichoke seeds here. And these seeds are much larger, so this is going to be much easier for me to get 1 seed in each cell. Again, the recommendations on this soil packet are to plant 1/4 inch deep. And so I'm going to take my finger and just poke a little hole in each cell here. And then, because these are larger seeds, I'm going to drop 1 in each cell. All right, and I'm going to label these as well. Each seed has a different germination time, so a time until they sprout. So if you've got a seed packet, you want to take a look on here. So for the artichokes, it says sprout time 10 to 20 days, depending on soil temperature. For collard greens, it's 7 to 10 days. So this is important, right, why we have the date on here, because it could be as late as March 22nd before I see any artichokes sprout and know if I need to plant any more, whereas the collard greens, if I don't see any sprouts in about a week, I know that it's time to replant. From here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring my potting soil back over, and I'm going to cover up our seeds by putting more soil on top. So I'm just going to gently sprinkle a little more soil across the top here to fill in those holes. And then once I have filled in my entire tray, I'm going to get a little spray bottle and mist the soil one more time. Remember, I've pre-moistened my soil before I put anything in here, but I want to maintain that soil moisture by continuing to moisten it. So just by being out here for a little bit in the sun with the air flowing on it, my soil is already having some water loss from evaporation. So I'm going to fill it back up with a little more water before I put my dome on. And then from there we will take these trays inside and I'll show you where to put them. Once your trays are seeded, it's time to put them in a place to grow. If you are at home and don't have a lot of space or want to invest in a lot of fancy equipment, you can use a south-facing window plus a regular light to add enough sunlight. These seedlings need 6 to 8 hours of light per day.
Right here, they're positioned on a south-facing window, but even with that, because of the tree outdoors, I've added a supplemental light. I've also placed them on a table just above my heater to help keep these plants nice and warm. Many seeds prefer soil temperatures in the 60s to 70s to germinate. If you have a heating mat, that's great, but if not, you can do things like strategically locating your plants next to windows and heaters in your home to help them grow. These plants have been in their tray for about a week, and you can see the collards and the Swiss chard have really taken off. These plants will stay inside until they grow their first 4 adult leaves. I'll begin the next process of hardening them off. Until then, my care routine involves leaving the lights on for at least 8 hours a day. So the lamp goes on when I come up in the morning to go to work, and it stays on until well after the sun is set. So normally around 8 or 9 p.m. I then come up and turn off the lamp and allow the plants to get some darkness at night. Because I've kept my soil moist, I'm able to only water once a day utilizing a spray bottle to mist all the plants to maintain soil moisture. Eventually, these plants will get uncovered as they get a little larger and start to outgrow their container. At that point, I may need to start watering twice a day. For now, it's just a lot of care and maintenance until these plants get a little bigger and are ready to go outside.